Jeff Bezos announced today that Amazon would raise wages on its hourly workers to $15 an hour. That is well above the minimum wage of $7.25. Bezos said, "We listened to our critics, thought hard about what we wanted to do, and decided we want to lead." Bezos is a leader. He can also be a polarizing leader as well. When I recently saw that he was to be interviewed at a conference, I was excited to listen in. I like to hear how leaders think. Bezos grew Amazon from his garage, has been an innovator, a risk taker, but is disciplined in his formula and his approach. That formula is not unlike the progression of many traders, including myself. The interview did not disappoint. He has some great thoughts about managing his business that can parallel the business of trading. Yes, if you trade, you should think of it as a business. So what words of advice can we as traders take from one of the most successful business leaders in the world? Well, let's find out in this video. On September 19, 2018, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos was interviewed at the Air Force Association Air and Space Conference. Why there? Well, Bezos, in addition to Amazon, is the founder of Blue Origin, a private aerospace company that looks to enable private human access to space, hence the crossover. In the interview, he talks about innovation or inventing, experiments, and failure. Take a look at this short clip.
To be innovative, you have to experiment. If you want to have more invention, you need to do more experiments per week, per month, per year, per decade. It's that simple. You cannot invent without experimenting. And here's the other thing about experiments. Lots of them fail. If you know it's going to work in advance, it is not an experiment.
Innovation or inventing is about experimenting. If it is an experiment, there are lots of failure. Sounds like the formula of my trading progression. How about yours? Let me share my trading innovation, my trading experiment story, and its failures along the way. Maybe some of you are on the similar path right now. When I started trading at Citibank years ago in the early 1980s, I, like most, wanted to know the fundamental story. That was it. Here is the economic release. React to that economic release. It was my first trading experiment. It made sense to me. What I found out was sometimes I zigged and the market zagged, and other times I zagged and the market zigged. I realized that my results were somewhat random. In trading, if there is no cause and effect that happens, well, most of the time, it's usually not a good thing, and it's usually not a good strategy for your trading. We as traders should experiment to find somewhat predictable cause and effect. By trading the news headlines solely, I did not have any confidence. I became fearful, so that experiment totally failed. So I innovated and experimented some more with the idea that I need to be a little bit more big picture from a fundamental standpoint. So I started to collect economic data in an Excel spreadsheet and tried to have a longer view on fundamentals that drove the market. Results were better. I can't say that they were great, but I was less reactionary and started to understand more about trends, both economic and price trends. In trading, trends are good. Not a complete failure, not great. I needed more innovation. At that time, I started to learn more about technical analysis. That was my next innovation/experimental phase. And I, like many of you, started to get books. Well, there's one. This one's Technical Analysis of Stock Trends. And then I got into, well, the new thinking in technical analysis. And then instead of the new thinking, I got into the new science of technical analysis. And then I thought I'd start to learn from market wizards out there. And finally, I got this one, Investment Secrets of a Hedge Fund Manager. Now, that is just some of the books that I've read. Some are good, some are bad. However, as a result of them, I started to understand more about defining risk and limiting risk, and that was a good thing. By this time in my career, I was getting to the point where I was more of an expert. I have read a lot. I went to a number of different trading seminars. I had a lot of mentors and friends in the trading community. I followed the markets at work and also followed them at home when I was not at work. I had done my 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell wrote about in his book Outlier that is needed to master a skill. Now, an expert has a breadth of knowledge that is beneficial, but it also can be paralyzing. Traders need to take what they know, all this knowledge, and apply that knowledge in a successful way. Bezos has some great thoughts about the paradox of innovating when you reach the expert level. Watch and listen.
One of the great paradoxes of inventing at a high level is that you need to be an expert in your domain area and you need to have a beginner's mind. You absolutely need both of those things. The world is too complex to actually just be a beginner. So, I can't, no matter how inventive I am, I can't go invent a new kind of brain surgery. You have to be a neurosurgeon. You have to already know all there is to know about brain surgery and then take it to the next level. The problem is, for many people, by the time they become true experts, they've lost that ability to see things in a fresh way. They've lost the beginner's mind. And so that's another thing. You always need to be stepping back and saying, if I'm an expert in launch vehicles or whatever it is, I need to step back and say, okay, if I were looking at this for the first time, what would I be seeing and noticing? These are just some of the things you need to do to be innovative.
Sure.
We as traders can become experts, but we also need to step back and take note of what we see and notice with a clearer beginner's mind. So with all this expert knowledge, I started to see things more clearly. More specifically, I realized that risk is a cornerstone for successful trading. All the talk about reward is just garbage. Understanding risk will lead to reward and limit the damage in the process. I learned that some tools did a lousy job of defining risk. So I considered them failures. I threw them out of my trading. I also found out that many tools were repetitive. They told the same thing that another tool did, and so I didn't want them as well. Many tools were so esoteric and confusing that I soon realized that they made me seem smart, but they were failures when it came to trading success. One of my realizations that I saw clearly in trading is that you don't need to be complicated. My expertise led to vision only by stepping back and seeing things with a beginner's mind. It is so easy, folks, to get hung up on all the knowledge and accompanied noise, whether it's technical tools or a fundamental story or algo or broker manipulation. When I stepped back and saw the landscape in an innocent, wow, golly gee, that is amazing way, that's when the dots started to connect. You need to do that. Now I want to show you one final clip that speaks a lot to me.
The Air Force was birthed on innovation, so you have a generally innovative crowd here. However, there is a balance between innovation and risk.
Yes.
How do you balance those two?
Well, here's what I would say is that the winners, when you're doing these experiments, winners pay for thousands of losers. So when you're talking about, put it in Amazon terms, we've had a few gigantic winners at Amazon. We've had Amazon Prime, our membership program. Amazon Web Services has been a gigantic winner. Our marketplace business, where we let third-party sellers compete against us on our primary retail real estate. Those are huge winners for Amazon. Each of those winners has more than paid for thousands of experiments. And so when you're talking about the kinds of experiments that you would be doing here at the Air Force, that I do at Amazon and at Blue Origin, the positive outcome is very long-tailed. You can get, you can get this gigantic. It's an analogy in baseball. Everybody knows that if you swing for the fences, you're going to hit more home runs, but you're also going to strike out more. And in baseball, the most runs you can score when you're up at the plate is 4. Your upside is capped. It's not long-tailed. In business, and I bet it's true here at the Air Force as well, that upside isn't really capped. Every once in a while in business, you step up to the plate, you swing as hard as you can, and you get 1,000 runs. And so that long-tailed distribution of those possible outcomes is what makes experimenting worthwhile. And so when you're balancing the risk, you say the most I can lose is the cost of the experiment. And the value of the invention could be uncapped.
Winners pay for thousands of losers. I am not sure that Bezos has had thousands of losers, but the point is well taken that when you innovate and experiment, you will fail. Trading is about failure. After all, each trade is just an experiment. But that experiment, if you focus on risk, has defined risk. That defined risk is the most that you could ever lose. On the other side is the potential for a long tail. And that long tail can be uncapped. Now, when I became a so-called expert, I was approached to write a book. I titled it Attacking Currency Trends. I'm no Jeff Bezos. There are 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and Jeff Bezos will be worth more than myself. However, if it's any consolation, he plagiarized a lot what I wrote in my book. The fact is, folks, what he says and what I wrote are truisms for success that have been around since the beginning of time. The inventor of fire sure had a long tail on that experiment, didn't he? Now, it doesn't mean everyone will get the lessons, but when you step back and see things with a beginner's mind, you will be surprised at the things that you notice. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, you're free to give it a thumbs down. My name is Greg Michalowski. Good fortune with your trading.